the part that concerns me the most is this idea in which people feel like they have to perform a type of harm, right? And so for myself, for example, I think about it and I think, well, okay, I can sort of construct one, right? Like I can say, my parents were born in a war zone in Korea, right? This is true. My family escaped from North Korea. That's true. I have generational trauma from Japanese imperialism and from my parents being born in a war zone. I mean, it should be true, right? When I was a child, I lived in I don't know, I'm sure you're very familiar with Cambridge, but I lived our family lived in the Alewife Towers.
I know the Ringe Towers. I read this in your book.
I
read about this.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. My estranged wife, I was married, coming to graduate school with 2 kids, and we split up while in graduate school when I was at MIT. And they moved my wife and 2 kids to the Ringe Towers that you talk about. So I know them very well.
So you know them. Yeah. So my point is just I could come up with this whole history of oppression for myself, and do I believe it? No. By the time I was in middle school, my family was very middle class, right? And my parents were very educated. And I guess I fear that what happens is that when students are incentivized to this degree to perform something like that they start to believe it, that they feel like the difference between going to Harvard and going to a perfectly fine but not Harvard school is that they have to construct this type of identity around themselves. And that if, the way in which Harvard was doing it for a while was basically if you didn't write about it in your essay, it didn't count, right? Like it didn't count that you were this minority group unless you told a sob story about it. I find that to be totally indefensible. Actually, I find it to be quite disgusting, right? That this elite institution is asking these kids to perform their trauma stories for them. As you've witnessed, in the past 20, 30 years, however long that this type of story has been asked to be told, have you noticed that the students themselves have started to imbue it more? Do you think it has an effect on the way in which the students think about themselves? Or do you think it's just something that they do once and they just say, okay, it helped me get into Harvard and now I'm just going to stop? Yeah.
I don't know. That's a question for a psychologist or somebody. I see the danger in what you say, and I have seen the performance that you make reference to, how systematic the embrace of this performative internalization. I've been victimized. I am harmed. I am diminished. How widespread that is, I'd only be guessing if I said anything. I do think it's debilitating and disempowering, and also it's a lie.
Right.
It's untrue to the actual objective condition of the mostly solidly upper middle class Black kids that I encounter here in my classes at Brown. They haven't exactly been beaten down by history, notwithstanding the fact that they will be able to recount both in their own lives and in the lives of their parents and grandparents a wealth of stories about disadvantage and mistreatment. But they're very, very privileged kids, right?
Yeah, I think for, the Asian population, maybe that was part of the angst that was going along, or for a lot of the parents of the kids who are applying to these schools, they were told stuff like, don't tell the immigrant story because they don't care about that, and it's I think that when you have, like Robert said, if there's a positive, there has to be a negative here, that there was almost this, I think for a lot of the students and their parents that I spoke to, this belief that if you're Vietnamese and you live in America, you probably have some generational trauma, somewhere nearby. Right? If you are from Korea, same thing, right? There's something that happened that was bad that if people who didn't know about it saw photos of, they would be shocked. If you saw the poverty in Seoul when my parents were growing up, for example, you would be shocked. I was shocked when I first saw it. This idea, I think that, and the thing that I think frustrated a lot of people, which is just look, nothing that happened to my family or me or whatever matters. But then you have for example, let's say a Chilean kid coming who grew up extremely wealthy, and that matters more, right? That he gets to check the Latino box. And so then within that type of atmosphere where those things are true and are happening, then how do you support it? And I think that was sort of falling off point for a lot of these Asian families. And, I don't know, I would just say personally for myself too, where it's just it just doesn't make any sense, right? the grandson of somebody who worked with Milton Friedman, to like, deregulate the economy of that country and is a billionaire, is so like that identity matters, right? But like this like poor Chinese kid who, or like poor Vietnamese kid, poor Cambodian kid, like that doesn't matter, like doesn't matter what happened to this family. It doesn't matter all these different things. It actually just matters that this kid can check the Latino box and we can't, like that's like not a good system, I think, for anyone. But I think it's, particularly on the left, because it almost makes a mockery of all the things that like we're supposed to care about, right? Like it makes a mockery of the egalitarian ideas that should be fueling a lot of these ideas. And I think that, supporting it is, I don't know, I think it's silly.